Let me remind you that this good news, this gospel, from the old English word Godspell. You heard the play Godspell? That's where it came from, Godspell. Or Goodspell. Goodspell is this: Jesus came to save people from their sins. His position as Messiah will deliver people from their greatest enemies, sin and death. As the Son of God, he had the power to defeat death by dying on a cross and the power to rise from the grave. Let me remind you that this is what the book of Mark is all about, that we've been in for about 28 years. Mark verse 1, chapter 1 says this: the beginning of the good news about Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. And let me remind you again that our primary purpose in living for Jesus as born-again believers is to let others know about this good news. Jesus shared this plan with his disciples who did not understand until he had risen again. And then as he was ascending to heaven, he gave them this charge: and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. They obeyed, and we have reaped the benefit of their faithfulness, have we not? Because of their faithfulness, not to stand there looking up into the heavens, looking at Jesus' soles of his feet, they went out and they told everybody. But the buck does not stop here. It doesn't stop here. We must continue to pass on this message, beloved. We will be witnesses in Johnson City and in all Austin and San Antonio and to the ends of the earth. It's not just my job. It's not just the evangelist's job or some other person's job. It's all our job. We must be faithful. Paul reminds us to do the work of an evangelist. That's what he said to a young pastor named Timothy. Do the work of an evangelist. Okay, you're not an evangelist. It's not your gift. I understand. We're still called to do the work of an evangelist. You don't like using gospel tracts? Fine. You don't want to stand on a box and preach? Fine. Then invite people over with the express intent of getting them to know you so you get to tell them about Jesus. People think I'm against friendship evangelism. No, I'm not. No. But are you doing friendship evangelism? Are you making friends of unbelievers for the sole purpose of getting them saved? So those are your three options. I don't know if any other ones there are. Tracts, open air preaching, talking to strangers on the street. I would submit to you all three of those are probably not as appetizing as being a friend to someone who's unsaved. Well, then be a friend to someone who's unsaved. Be a friend. Mix it up with those pagans. Let them see that light in you. But don't wait too long. Don't wait for them to notice your light, because we're Americans, and Americans pretty much only care for themselves. They aren't really noticing what the other person's doing unless you're doing something wrong. So it's more than just not doing something wrong, it's doing something right. We had dinner with Holly and Mike last week, and they make it a point to invite unbelievers over to their home. And they tell me the interchanges they have, and sometimes they're a little bit grueling, But you got to wait and be patient. Let's do it. Let's do it, because the buck does not stop here. Let me ask you, how many of you have been given the gospel by a non-cult member in the last 5 years? How many of you have been stopped you on the street, or even a friend tried to give the gospel to you, or a gospel tract in the last 5 years? How many of you have been witnessed to in the last 5 years at least one time? Raise your hand. 2 people. What happened? The Great Commission, that we're to go and to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything Jesus commanded. We're not even there of making disciples yet. We're not even obeying what Jesus said in Mark 16:15. Go into all the world and preach the good news to all creation. We're not even doing that. So if only 2 of you have been witnessed to in 5 years, what do you think the rest of the country is like? Bill Bright wrote in his book, Heaven and Hell, 10 years ago that he believed only 2% of Christians share their faith. That's 10 years ago. I would say now it's probably 1%, if even that. So I want this to be a gentle nudging. Some of you will see it as a kick in the butt. But we've got to do something. Charles Spurgeon said, do something, do something, do something. What do you think he meant by that? Yeah. So we got to do something. Our nation is divided. The only thing that can bring our nation together is through Christ. The only way the unsaved in Johnson City can be saved is through Christ. The only way they're going to hear, according to Paul in Romans, is if you tell them about Christ. So let me remind you, Paul says, do the work of an evangelist. Peter says, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. Can you give the reason for the hope you have? Can you? You know what? It's as simple as one word. What do you think that one word is? It's just that. And then from there, let's see what happens. He may just go, or tell me more. Jude reminds us, be merciful to those who doubt. Save others by snatching them from the fire. Do we know when the person that we love is going to die? Do we know? We don't know. They could die tomorrow, right? So there's an urgency here. And Jesus reminds us to go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. And I want to remind you from 1 Corinthians 5, and I'll close with this. He has committed to us the message of reconciliation, that people can be reconciled to God. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. Aren't you glad President Trump has ambassadors that represent the nation's interest? Aren't you glad it isn't President Trump trying to make peace with all the nations? Some people are good at it, others aren't. God has entrusted us with the ambassadorship of telling others about Jesus Christ. Will you share the good news with someone this week? Will you?